It started with a story so shocking, so gut-wrenching, that people couldn't stop talking about it. A beloved whale trainer, years of trust and training behind her, suddenly betrayed in the most brutal way imaginable, right in front of a live audience. They said the orca turned on her. They said it was all caught on camera, and the internet went wild. Over the past few weeks, social media has been flooded with posts about the supposed death of a whale trainer named JC Cardcliffe. The claims were dramatic. During a live show in front of a crowd of horrified onlookers, the killer whale she had devoted her life to training allegedly attacked her. People shared the video. They described the screams. They said you could see the exact moment everything went wrong. The story hit hard because it felt real. Jessica's tale mirrored real tragedies the world had already seen, like the heartbreaking loss of trainer Brancheau in 2010, the fatal accident involving Alexis Martínez in 2009, and the death of Keltie Byrne back in 1991. These names were burned into history, and the thought of it happening again. It was almost too much to bear, but then the truth began to crack through the noise. Investigators dug deeper. Fact-checking sites traced the origin of the so-called attack video. And what they found turned the entire story upside down. There was no live show, no screaming crowd, no tragic betrayal between trainer and whale. The whole thing, every horrifying detail, was a carefully crafted fiction. And here's the twist. It wasn't just made up by a person spinning a wild tale. It was generated by artificial intelligence. Images, descriptions, and even the video that supposedly proved the tragedy. It was all digital smoke and mirrors, built on fragments of real events from the past. The biggest inspiration, the actual devastating incident involving renowned trainer Brancheau, whose death in 2010 still haunts those who knew her. So, while the internet was reeling over JC Cardcliffe's so-called final moments, the reality was this: she never existed. The story was never real, but the emotions it stirred, the fear, the grief, the outrage, those were very real indeed. Sometimes the truth isn't just stranger than fiction, it's more revealing, and in this case, it showed us just how easily our hearts can be pulled into a story. Even when that story never happened at all. It's the kind of story that makes your stomach drop. A trainer, standing on the edge of a massive pool, face to face with the creature she's spent years caring for, loving, and trusting. The crowd is cheering, cameras are rolling, and then, without warning, that trust is shattered in the most violent way possible. Over the last few weeks, social media has been on fire with one name: JC Cardcliffe. Posts claimed she was a talented and beloved whale trainer who met a horrifying end in front of a live audience. The details were chilling. During a performance, the killer whale she had trained for years suddenly lunged at her, dragging her under the water. People said it all played out on video. They described gasps, screams, the desperate struggle. They said it was one of the most shocking moments ever captured. The story felt too real to question, because tragedies like this have happened before. In 2010, the world mourned the loss of Brancheau, a renowned trainer whose life ended during a performance. In 2009, Alexis Martínez suffered the same fate. And back in 1991, Keltie Byrne's death sent shockwaves through the marine animal community. So when JC alleged final moments spread online, people didn't just believe it, they felt it. But here's where the story twists. Investigators began to pull at the threads. Fact-checkers went hunting for the source. And what they uncovered was something nobody expected. There was no live show, no tragic betrayal, no JC Cardcliffe. The videos, the photos, the entire narrative, all of it was fake, not just exaggerated or misremembered, completely fabricated. And not by an ordinary storyteller either. This was the work of artificial intelligence, weaving together images, descriptions, and evidence out of thin air, inspired by real events from the past. The backbone of the fictional story came from the devastating real Death of Dawn Brancheau in 2010, a tragedy that left a scar on SeaWorld and the people who knew her. But in this AI-made retelling, a new character, a fake trainer named JC, was invented to make the horror feel fresh and believable, and it worked. Millions of people were hooked, they cried, they raged, they shared the story without a second thought. That's the dangerous power of a convincing lie, especially one built on the memory of something real. In the end, JC Cardcliffe never existed. No killer whale turned on her, but the emotions her story stirred up. The sadness, the anger, the unease, that was all real, and maybe the most chilling part is this: if I can create a tragedy so believable that the world grieves for a person who never lived, how will we know what's real the next time? You ever hear a story so intense, so gut-punching, that it feels like you're there? That's what happened when I first came across the name JC Cardcliffe. Picture it, a packed arena, kids laughing, cameras flashing, the smell of salt water in the air. And out of that bright blue pool rises an orca, a creature JC had trained for years. They said she trusted it like family, and then, in the blink of an eye, everything turned, the crowd's cheers became screams. The orca lunged, JC vanished beneath the surface. People claimed the struggle was brutal, minutes of thrashing, chaos, and disbelief, and the worst part, they said it was all caught on video. It was the kind of story you don't question, because we've seen this happen before. Dawn Brancheau in 2010, Alexis Martínez in 2009, Keltie Byrne in 1991, each name carrying the weight of a tragedy no one ever wanted to relive. So when the posts started spreading, nobody stopped to ask, wait, is this even real? But then, cracks began to show. A few curious investigators started digging. Fact-checkers traced the posts back to their source, and what they found floored me. There was no live show, no screaming audience. No JC Cardcliffe, the whole thing, every heart-stopping detail, was a fabrication and not just made up by a person, but by artificial intelligence. The video people swore they'd seen, generated the photos. Fabricated, the character of JC completely fictional, built from fragments of real tragedies, with the biggest inspiration being the heartbreaking loss of Dawn Brancheau. Think about that for a second. An AI-crafted story convinced the internet to mourn for someone who never existed. People felt rage, people cried, and all of it was for nothing. JC's death was never real, but the emotions, the shock, the grief, those were very real. And that's the part that still gives me chills, because if this story could fool millions, what happens the next time? I still remember the first time I heard about her. JC Cardcliffe, a name that, for a moment, seemed to be on everyone's lips. She was a seasoned whale trainer, confident, skilled, and loved by the crowds who came to see her perform. For years, she worked with the same orca. They said the bond between them was unshakable, a connection built on trust, respect, and maybe something deeper. But on that day, everything changed. The stadium was full. Laughter and music filled the air. JC stood at the edge of the pool, smiling, reaching out for the creature she had raised and trained. Then, without warning, it lunged, gasps turned to screams. The water exploded with movement as the orca dragged her under. For a moment, people thought it might be part of the act, but it wasn't. The struggle was fierce. The crowd was frozen, watching helplessly as seconds dragged on like hours, and then the surface of the water grew still. Those who were there say you could feel the air leave the stadium. No one spoke. No one moved. All they could do was stare at the pool, the same pool where minutes ago joy had filled the air. JC never resurfaced. The whispers started almost immediately. Shock, horror, disbelief. Some said they'd never go near a marine park again. Others said they couldn't stop replaying the scene in their minds. One moment, she was the star of the show. The next, she was gone, and for those who saw it happen, that day will never be forgotten. It began like any other show. The seats were packed. children leaning over the railings, eyes wide with excitement. Cameras flashing, the sound of splashing water echoing through the arena. JC Cardcliffe walked out with the confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. She waved to the crowd, knelt by the pool, and called for the orca she had trained for years. The animal surfaced, its massive body glistening under the lights, its dark eyes fixed on hers. They said she trusted it completely. They said it trusted her. JC reached out her hand, smiling the way she always did. And then it happened in an instant. The calm shattered, the orca lunged, water erupted, and she was gone beneath the surface. Gasps turned to sharp cries. People stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. The water churned violently, splashes, struggles, every second dragged out, heavy and unbearable. Somewhere in the chaos, a child screamed. Others covered their mouths. The sound of the crowd faded under the crashing of water. And then, silence, the pool stilled, the orca circled slowly, its shadow gliding under the surface. JC never came back up. For a long moment, no one moved. The cheers that had filled the stadium minutes earlier were gone, replaced by a hollow, suffocating quiet. People began to leave in stunned silence, as if speaking aloud would make it too real. One moment, she had been the heart of the show. The next, she was only a memory. I was there that day. I can still see it, clear as if it happened yesterday. The place was electric. Kids laughing, parents snapping pictures, the smell of salt water hanging in the air. JC Cardcliffe walked out with that easy confidence she always had, smiling like she was exactly where she belonged. The crowd loved her. You could feel it. The orca slid up from beneath the water, massive and beautiful, its black, and white skin gleaming under the lights. JC crouched at the edge, hand outstretched, just like I'd seen her do 100 times before. Then, in a heartbeat, everything changed. A sudden lunge, a splash so loud it made people flinch. She disappeared under the surface. The pool became a storm, thrashing, churning water swallowing her whole. I could hear people gasping, someone shouting her name. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Seconds stretched into what felt like forever, and then, nothing, just still water. She never came back up. The crowd stood there, frozen, staring at the pool as if maybe, if they waited long enough, she'd rise from the water and smile like it was all part of the act. But she didn't. I'll never forget the way the noise in that arena just died. 1 minute, it was cheers and music. The next, silence so heavy it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. And that's the last memory I have of JC. A smile, a splash, and then nothing. The music was loud. The crowd was buzzing, and then everything stopped. JC was standing at the edge of the pool, hand out, eyes locked with the orca gliding toward her. The water shimmered under the lights. For a split second, it was perfect. Calm, controlled, beautiful. Then it happened, a sudden, violent surge. The water exploded upward. JC vanished beneath the surface in an instant. The crowd gasped as one. The pool boiled with movement, splashes so big they reached the front rows. Shouts, screams, everyone frozen in place, not sure if it was real or part of the show. Seconds dragged, then a minute, still no sign of her. The thrashing slowed, the water calmed. The orca's shadow moved lazily beneath the surface, circling. Waiting, JC never came back up. The sound in the arena changed, cheers replaced by whispers, then nothing at all. It was the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. People started leaving slowly, glancing back at the still pool as if hoping they'd see her one last time. But she was gone. One moment she was the star, the next, just an empty space at the edge of the water. Some images never leave you. This is one of them. The air was warm, the water glittering under the lights. JC stood at the pool's edge, smiling like she always did, her hand reaching toward the black, and, white giant drifting below the surface, the orca rose slowly, almost gracefully, until its eyes met hers. For a heartbeat they just stared at each other, trainer and creature, side by side. Then the water erupted, A single lunge, a flash of movement, and she was gone. The pool became chaos. Waves slamming the edges, the white water swallowing everything. The noise was deafening, yet it felt like the world had gone quiet inside my head. People leaned forward, searching for her in the mess of spray and shadows. Seconds passed, then more, and still nothing. The Orca slowed, the water stilled. JC never came back up. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. No one moved, no one spoke. All eyes were fixed on that empty stretch of water, hoping for a miracle that never came. And that's how it ended. No warning, no second chance, just a smile, a splash, and then nothing but the still, dark surface of the pool. I don't talk about that day much, but I can still see it, every detail. The crowd was alive, cheering, clapping, leaning forward in their seats. JC stood at the water's edge, her hair pulled back, eyes bright. She looked so sure of herself, so at home. The Orca surfaced slowly, water streaming down its sides. She reached for it, smiling, the way you would for an old friend, and then everything changed. A sudden lunge, a crash of water. Her body disappeared beneath the surface in an instant. The pool exploded with movement, waves slapping the walls, white foam everywhere. I remember gripping the rail in front of me, my knuckles white, waiting, praying. But the seconds kept slipping by, and she never came back up. The water stilled. The Orca circled, silent, its shadow sliding beneath the surface. The crowd didn't move, no one breathed. That silence, it's the part I remember most. One moment the air was full of life, the next, it was like the world had stopped, and in that stillness we all knew she was gone. The light shimmered across the water, turning the surface into liquid silver. The air was warm, carrying the scent of salt and the low hum of the crowd. JC stepped out, calm and confident, her footsteps echoing against the wet concrete. She paused at the edge of the pool, scanning the water like she knew exactly where to look. A ripple broke the stillness, then the Orca rose, smooth, deliberate, powerful. Water streamed down its sleek body as it glided closer, eyes fixed on hers. She crouched, one hand reaching forward, her smile soft and certain. The arena leaned in with her, and then, without warning, the surface exploded. A violent splash, a flash of black and white, and she was gone. The pool churned wildly, waves slamming into the sides. The noise was deafening. Gasps, cries, the crash of water. Then, slowly, it all began to fade. The water calmed. The shadow moved in slow circles beneath the surface. JC never came back up. For a long time, no one spoke. The cheers that had filled the air minutes before were gone, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush you. One moment she was there, smiling, alive the next. Only the still water remained. It happened so fast, but in my mind, it's frozen. JC was right there at the edge of the pool. The crowd pressed in all around me. Bodies close, voices loud, the smell of salt water heavy in the air. The Orca's back broke the surface, smooth, silent, almost too perfect. JC leaned forward, her hand reaching out, the water lapping softly at the concrete. Then a sudden surge, water everywhere. She vanished, the pool erupted. Waves slamming into the walls, spray soaking the front rows. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My eyes locked on the churning water, waiting for her to break the surface. Seconds crawled. My chest felt tight. The noise of the crowd warped, half gasps, half silence, and then nothing. The water stilled. The Orca drifted just beneath the surface, a dark shape moving slowly in circles. She didn't come back. The air felt thick, suffocating. People stood frozen, hands over their mouths. The world outside that pool didn't seem to exist anymore, and all I could do was keep staring at the water, hoping for something. Anything, but there was only stillness. Flashes, water, a smile. JC standing at the pool's edge, sunlight catching the spray behind her. The crowd's noise blurring into a dull roar. The Orca's shadow sliding beneath the surface, slow, deliberate. She bends forward, reaches out, everything feels still. Too still. Then a violent crash. The world explodes into white water. Her body disappears. I can't hear the crowd anymore. Just the rush of blood in my ears, the slap of waves against the walls. The air feels heavier, the seconds stretch, bend, break, the water starts to calm, the shadow keeps circling, she doesn't come back, people stand frozen, shapes in the corner of my vision, I can't move my eyes from the pool. It's too quiet now, far too quiet, and then, nothing, just the surface, dark and still, like she was never there at all. She stood at the edge, the water was calm, the crowd was loud, a shadow rose beneath the surface. Black and white, slow, her hand reached out, a sudden splash, she was gone, the pool churned, waves crashed, then, silence, the shadow circled once more, the water went still, she never came back, light rippled across the water. The air shimmered with heat and voices. JC stepped forward, her shadow stretching toward the pool. The orca's back broke the surface, smooth and glistening. It glided closer, each movement slow, deliberate. She crouched, fingers just above the water, a breath, a heartbeat, then the surface erupted. Spray exploding upward, white foam swallowing her whole. The crowd's noise fractured into gasps and screams. The water thrashed, walls echoing with the crash of waves. The churning slowed, ripples faded, the pool stilled. The shadow moved in a slow circle beneath the surface.